So you've built your world, you've built your NPCs, your players have got their characters. You finally sit down behind the screen and you Mac wheel go to loading. What's a world and how do I build one? When you're homebrew, you're never truly done.
Just because your players have been told something by one person doesn't mean it's fact. We're working on 3 custom races. We're doing this with the hope of pulling together a community. We want to find more like-minded people that love the things that we love. Hi guys, welcome to the first episode of Above the Table. This is myself and Cody sitting around and talking tabletop roleplay games. We've got a few things we're going to tackle in today's episode, and we'll be breaking these up into smaller things if you guys just want the highlights. Otherwise, let's start talking some nonsense.
It's always good when you start things like this to go with the easiest question, or the simplest question rather, which is why? Why do we do what we do? Why have we opted to do what we want to do in this particular format and in this particular way? And please feel free to interject at any point because I will ramble forever. Everyone who's plays at the table, so like Seb, myself, Sky, Monica Bailey, and even Liam for the time that he was there, and Josh, who's graciously been guesting on the campaign for a while now. We all love storytelling, I think is the unanimous agreement, and we all love how there's no one way to tell stories anymore, and there's no one way to convey themes and all that sort of stuff that you want to convey and you want to do. So that really kicked it off, like to be able to go, hey, we're still going to play D&D and tabletop games, but why don't we kind of make it like a running series or a show that other people can sort of watch and be like, oh, cool, this is how other people play a game and this is how other people get their creative juice on. So let's do that. But that was just me. This is like my kind of thing. What do you think?
Well, as I've mentioned on our discussions where we have the whole table sort of talk about what we're working on.
Tome table.
I was always a DM. So I met these guys because I started my Seb Make Stuff YouTube channel where I make terrain and props and stuff. And Cody reached out to me. And we started chatting and realized we didn't live that far from each other. And we quickly became best friends.
I know, best friend. Yeah.
I too have an absolute obsessive love with storytelling, fantasy, sci-fi, all the fun genres, just a massive nerd, to a point where I studied a bit at uni in world building, and I've made some little false world books and things myself that nothing ever came of, but I essentially was building my own D&D world before realizing what D&D was, and making up stories and just getting really into that sort of stuff. So being introduced to a world like this, thanks to Critical Role mostly,
yeah,
I very quickly became hooked. And there's something amazing about being able to step out of your shoes and into another character and play as an adult.
Yeah.
Adults don't get to play very often. And this is one of those situations where you can put a whole heap of strangers down at a table. And we did that last week with 2 players that had never met any of the other guys before. And very quickly, everyone just fell into their roles, and it was fun and comfortable and great.
Yeah, it was easy, which is which I think is a big one. It's the it's funny you bring that up. So you're right. The concept of world building and all that sort of stuff is so crazy. Like, what you mentioned before about the creating a homebrew world, and this whole setting before you even knew what D&D was. I actually had a good friend of mine from when I was quite younger, in my youth, named Ben, and Ben was really into his fantasy, and he was really into his fantasy books and stuff, and he wanted to write a book, when he was younger, and that's what he always wanted to do, and we loved it. And I remember going to his house once, and he had A4 sheets as far as the eye could see along the entire upper rim of his roof. And I was like, what's that? And he goes, that's the first page from where I started world building all the way to where I'm at now. And it was such a cool, unique way. And then from every page, if there was something that jutted off from that, there was literally he had a line where it would point to the next page and he would stick it underneath it.
like the
Pepe Silva, like the Pepe Silva, all the papers. It's crazy, and that's how he did it, and it was very unique. I'd never seen it before, and it's probably not for everybody, but it was cool. But yeah, it's the idea of escapism. And that you shouldn't be doing it as an adult really doesn't sit well with me because, of our generation, born into the 90s, going into the noughties, into now, let's be frank, the world just sucks outside, right? Like, outside the confines of your home, it is dark and it is sad and it is depressing. So the fact that it's like, hey, we like to escape the reality sometimes and substitute it with this fantasy game or like urban fantasy or high fantasy, it becomes this very... Anyone who thinks escapism isn't good it's unrealistic because, the world is harsh and it is like that.
I was talking to a friend of mine not that long ago, and they study in like child development specifically, but a lot of mental and physical development sort of things. And they were saying that they had just recently read something about how important it is for adults to play, to fantasize, to not just be in reality all the time. And that's what I feel like I get out of this. And it feels like a therapy session sometimes.
It does.
Let's talk about world building.
So, the first segment that we've decided to jump into, which is something I actually got to speak about just recently, is world building for homebrew settings. Because we've only, so far, I think maybe besides yourself, when you prepped to run the Witchlight, while we on the Witchlight, everything that we've done on the channel so far has been homebrew setting, homebrew Pantheon, everything like that.
Even our Feywild, that was completely homebrew.
Yeah, the Feywild one shot for the Relicum was completely homebrewed in what we think the Feywild is in Miros, which is our homebrew setting that we have. So recently, I think it was nearly 2 months ago now, I think, I got to host a panel for the first time, which is really cool, at the GHMX Expo. I believe that says GHMX in Brisbane City, which is here in Queensland, Australia, which was a gaming hobby and model expo, and they were looking for speakers to do segments on what they had specialties on. And a friend of mine who was already running something at the event said, hey, I think you'd do really well at this. Got in contact with G, the guy running the event, and I did a whole segment called What's a World and How Do I Build One? Which seems to be the running theme and phrase that I've attached to everything, because that's what it is. When you're homebrew, you're never truly done.
Oh, no.
So I thought that would be a great place to start, because we seem to have found our groove in creating our own adventures, using the 5e system or using other systems that we might explore later on down the line, but completely creating the environment around that system. So for those who are up to date with our campaign, our world, the world that we set our campaign in was Miros, which I developed probably like 2 or 3 months before we even started running Session Zeros. I think I had the baseline for the world, a couple of the countries.
This is a brand new world for this campaign.
This was brand new. So I took everything. Most who've seen probably know that I used to do a podcast with Sky called Dice and Magic way back in the day. And that setting was Vildmorn. And Vildmorn was more your classic Euro high fantasy, England high fantasy, that sort of stuff, with a few sprinkled in sci-fi kind of like steampunky kind of things. And that world was fun, but unfortunately just timing and stuff, that podcast fell apart. And I knew that when I wanted to come back and do it again, I wasn't going to use the same world again. I was going to completely build it from scratch with more of the influences that I wanted to put in there, not the stuff that I thought people would want to see, which is where Miros came from. And Miros is very inspired by Bloodborne, Dark Souls, like all those From Software fantasy games where the world is dark and it's evil and it's filled with strife, and people have just learned to make do. And they, some people, there is love and there is happiness, but it is, outside your little fence. It's very bad. It's very Attack on Titan. Outside these walls, it sucks and you will die. So that's where that kind of stemmed off from. And before I ramble on any further, the first bit of advice I ever gave to somebody that's like, I'm nervous about designing a homebrew world, what do I do? This is what I think is the best approach to tell someone who's new at homebrewing a world. Only develop the first 2 places your party will be, which 9 times out of 10 in a first adventure should be where they meet and the place that they're going to for the very first time. Because most times, 9 times out of 10, the story is going to follow the party leaving the place they met and then starting their first arc, as we've learned, as we've unanimously called them here, in that new area. You know what I mean? As an example, I believe we'll go Critical Role Campaign 3 because that's the one I've watched the most of. I'm completely up to date with that. I didn't come in at the tail end for C2 and all that sort of stuff. They start in Marquette. And they're in... I always forget the name of the city that they started in Marquette in Season 3. I always forget. It's got a cool name. Drusar, yes. They start in Drusar, and they're in Drusar for like ages. Ages before they go anywhere else. And even then, they actually don't go that far. And then they go back. And they've jumped to and from Drusar a few times leading up to...
think about the old DM's starter kit with Vandalin. You've got one central town and the surrounding areas, and that is more than enough for an awesome adventure. That was the first game I ever ran, and it ran beautifully. Literally, it's that. The best advice I can do is develop where they meet, develop where they're going to go, and then you'll find when you get into the groove and you figure out how everyone plays, how everyone does this, who thinks like what, you'll start developing the world out like a spider web with those like hot takes that everyone's going to bite on. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It took maybe the first 10 episodes of our campaign for me to figure out what makes everyone really bite and chomp at the bit, and now I've just got it, and I've just figured it out. It's chocolate, yeah. I've just got it figured out. I know what's going to get everyone to bite. I know what's going to get everyone to react and be invested. Not to mention, backstory is always good as well. See, I approach world building a very different way. I think what Cody said is the smart way, especially if you're running your first game. But
debatable.
Like I mentioned earlier, I was lucky enough when I went to uni, we got to select our own electives. And so for 2 of mine, I picked world building. And again, in a very lucky situation, one of our teachers in narrative development, where I studied, Rowena was her name. I don't remember her last name, and I really wish I did because I'd love to find what her books were. She had a full series of fantasy books. She travelled around Australia teaching world building workshops.
Surely you could go check the backlog of the university's hirings.
I'm sure I could, but I'm a lazy piece. But I should do, especially since I'm calling it out, because she had a fantasy series and she taught world building workshops, and I found that out. So I asked if she could be my tutor for a double elective sort of series where I completely studied the idea of world building, building maps, creating fantasy worlds, fantasy languages, fantasy maps, fantasy governments, religions. Like, I deep dived into that.
Hell yeah.
So when I like to start something, my first thing is to build a map. The main continent or island we're going to be on, a couple of major cities, and your geography. And then I go from there building out smaller towns, where rivers would likely run, where a desert would form based on the mountain range. Like, I go deep onto that because
rivers have been the thing that Seb has pestered me on. He has pestered me for months. Every time. So Seb's designing the map for an
when we
round.
first kicked this off,
I
asked Cody about a map. And we essentially built into my character that he's a cartographer to give me an excuse to be making the maps as we go around this world.
Plus, you're the guy that's travelled the country the most, so you kind of got a good idea.
We built it into my character to make it work even better. But what we've kind of done is Cody sent me a rough sketch where he had planned for some major cities, and I filled in the blanks. I've added mountain ranges, forests, extra small towns, where ports would likely be based on the geographies and where things would form. And then I'm starting to pitch things back to him like, there could be a civil war between this area and this area because based on the geography and where the armies and the the main breadbasket of the country lines
And
up.
I'm like, why? Why would that happen? No one's blowing each other up yet.
Well, obviously, I argue that they would. Two major competing cities on opposite sides of a mountain range. One that is, the one at the north is all hoity-toity and up themselves, and then the ones below control the military area and the breadbasket. You're asking for trouble.
You're just asking to get smoked. They're just going to get murked. You heard it here first. They did. So he just gets the whole campaign. I'm just going to blow an arrow shroud off the map.
That's where my brain goes with world building. Like, I go deep dive. Like, I'm the Tolkien style of world building personally, of build out everything and then figure out how that would all flow and interact. But it's always too much. So when I do run a game, there's so much going on in the world. And I love it that when someone asks, oh, well, where's, so-and-so? I can point it out or I can explain and have a relationship between two cities. But I've spent months prepping for what turns into 2 sessions and then someone has a kid or someone moves away and then the game falls apart, which I think we've all been through.
Yeah, too much. It's a recurring thing. But that's why your approach to world building and my approach to world building, I think, was why it was so handy. It was so, what's the term? Like, just
cohesive?
synchronized. Yes, cohesive. Is because I develop enough that I know I can, set up for when we start moving or we go to this point, we go to this place. And when I go, oh, hey, add this to the map because this is about to happen, or the party have just crossed a section. Add this, there's whole segments of the Urinera Shroud map that has nothing. There's no towns, no cities, nothing, because the party just haven't gone there yet. We don't need it. We don't need to have it. But eventually, when we do,
to play the idea that the map that we're running from is something that Hugel who's my character, has put together as he's explored the countryside and talked to other people and compared to other people's maps.
And copied from some books that he's had his hands on.
Even what we've got is going to lean into the unfaithful narrator style of storytelling where it might not be right. I might have a town that we think is somewhere that doesn't have to be because I've gotten the wrong information or I've looked at an out-of-date map. That is also the fun of not having to have something too concrete, which, again, I often go over the top with making a super solid, locked-in plan for what I'm doing, but it's not always the best approach.
And it just comes down to, eventually, it's like what I said earlier, you will get a few sessions in and you'll figure out your groove, right? You'll figure out your groove and you'll know this is the better option, or this is the better option. And it took me about 10 episodes to find my groove. I was pretty confident. From episode 1 to 5, I'm super happy with how that went. You know what I mean? There was just enough intrigue, you know what I mean? I think there was a couple of little dick-ups here and there, but we flew through that and it was lickety-split. Loved it. 6 to 10, again, I think flowed really well. You know what I mean? The introduction of Josh as Sebastian, who's been a wonderful, addition to the dynamic of the party, being that we've got 4 people that are really close and we've kind of got that 5th outsider that's slowly gained their trust and has helped them do things that would line up with him. That's been great, which again can also tie into, in a roundabout way, the unfaithful narrator when it comes down the line, when eventually he has to go off and do his own thing and the party has to go off and do their own things and then the stories deviate and then that's it. It just happens and that's it.
I do quite like as well that we've got that sort of thing. So we started out with Daria, who was one of our players who unfortunately couldn't continue in the campaign, but we had sort of a starting party and lost one, but we've continued the group through and now we've brought another person in and we do have plans for more guests to come in the future and expand our wider community of nerds that play this game and build up the lore and add more. I think more people brings a whole new perspective into any situation and it adds more to the game.
Yes.
Coming up with characters.
Every person who plays tabletop gaming, I've realized everyone has a very unique way of how they run their characters or they run their worlds, as an example. So when I develop characters, because I don't get to play very often, I really don't. I was in a campaign for a little while with my friend Freddie and his wife Bree, and it was lovely. I ended up having to step away from that campaign because I'd spread myself too thin, and I realised. So it was like, well, I'm not going to pull back on running my show, so I'm going to step out of the thing that I know was probably a bit much for me. And I was running another campaign as well from my other friends from we just called the Game Shop group. And that one I was super invested in that. So I was like, unfortunately, I had to take a step away from the one where it just wasn't really lining up for me. But that was the first time I ever got to really develop a character that I would be in long term. And we got to start at level 10, which was really cool. And I ended up making this astral elf sailor who is a Song of Swords bard, and I had this whole backstory. And he died like 2 sessions in, got murked off, and I ended up just creating my proxy of Father Gascoigne from Bloodborne. Just made him a Lycan blood hunter, which was really fun. And I wasn't fussed about my elf dying the first time because that's just how the dice roll.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Like 6 backup characters ready.
Yeah,
Google's soft.
Yeah. So now, whenever like Seb or even like Skies run games for us at one point, like before, when we're off camera, when I make characters, I try to make like real short. This is where they grew up. This is what they did. This is their goal. This is what's happening, and just let it run. Nice. It's way easier, I find anyway. What about you? As far as like development, backstory, anything else you want to add to that?
For character? I don't really know. So Hugel was the first time I ever had to develop a player character. I'm more used to developing NPCs, and in that case it's more about building relationships and communities and how they all interact. You don't really think as much on, like, you give them a slight backstory or a motivation, but you don't give them a detailed thing. And I think even that started with me. With Hugel at first there was a base idea of him being like sad, like the Tears of the Clown was the concept.
The Tears of the Clown.
Like, he presented happy, he presented overly affectionate and helpful, but deep down he was all messed up. And as we started playing and I started falling into that character, it exploded, and I had all this idea. I was messaging Cody like, is this too dark? How sad can my backstory be? And he's like, yeah, go hard, man.
Never.
So I made the saddest backstory I could think of, and not just the whole family was killed and now I'm on an adventure.
Oh, my parents are dead.
I tried to give him a real duality. So there's two opposing forces in Hugel that are like fighting. And like you said earlier, like there's elements of myself from the past and things that I've learned since. But I kind of took extremes of that. So I took almost what I know I was like as like a teenager, early 20s, and then took all of the self-improvement and psychology and philosophy that I've learned in my life and tried to go, what if stupid young Seb got dropped with all this knowledge?
Yeah.
It'd be this fight between the immaturity and the stupidity and the recklessness and then the logic and the stoicism and the...
It's like the we see it heaps in media, is what happens when the young mind is beset by great knowledge. You know what I mean? It's that classic trope of like, oh, the high school kid that's like, they're just too smart and people don't get them, you know what I mean? It's very much like that.
But instead of smart, it was more wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. Wisdom, the understanding of the world around him.
A young kid that gets uploaded to the internet or some shit, and they really just know their intelligence. But I wanted to take all the wisdoms that I've learned over the years.
And like stoicism.
Yeah, like I got really into stoicism, and there's a good collection of books out there that like I just got obsessed with a couple of years ago. And like I've completely shifted my entire trajectory of my life since getting into a lot of this stuff. And it's often that thought of what if, young me got thrown that when I wasn't ready for it. But also for Hugel, I've thrown in that super, super sad, morbid history that you know about that will come out in our campaign.
Well, we're working on it.
Which is something I've never had to deal with. So it's a really interesting one. Even other things like making him a parent. I am not a parent, so getting to play out some existence that I don't know is really fascinating. And I've gotten to a point where I love my fantasy child. Like
This child that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I love them.
But I don't know, I found playing a character really fun. And I was even talking to a friend of mine the other day and noticing that characteristics that I came up with for Hugel. So one of the first things I know with making a character is pick a few expressions that they say. So, thank you kindly is Hugel. I now say thank you kindly. I caught Mom saying it the other day in the chat.
Thank you.
I'm like, little things, I'm like, okay, this is actually becoming a part of me now. Like, this character that I've developed is now, like, I'm not just making them and putting them over here, but things I'm learning from that character, I'm taking on.
Yeah, I actually had that happen at work the other day. So I work in a trucking depot. I work in the transport industry. So you know that myself and all my teammates, we just berate each other because that's just what we do. And I found since we run, which at this point, would probably come out after the new one shot, I would assume, depending.
I don't know.
We don't know when this is going to come out. But Ted ran a one shot where I played a character that had an English accent. And every time he hated someone annoyed him, he called him a wanker. And I was like, you bloomin' wanker. And now I realise I'm saying that way too often at work.
We become our characters.
We become our characters. But
But that can be a good thing. Like, I can't remember what it was. It was I think it was the Critical Role guys. It could have been any random D&D TikToker. But when they sort of talk about, like, you and a group of friends, like, our imagination is so strong and the way our mind works, when you defeat an enemy together and you think back on it, it sets off that same emotional part of your brain as if you'd done that in real life.
I think, are you referring to the interview that Joe Manganiello did?
Possibly.
Because Joe Manganiello says the exact same thing. He goes, oh, hey, remember when we fought that dragon? Remember when we killed that mind flayer?
That kind of thing. And it's so true. Like, this entire group that we play with, I had never met. I met Cody, I think, twice before I joined
Maybe 3 times before.
Because he came down for a couple of craft days where we made some stuff that were originally going to be in his old campaign. Then he invited me to play in the new one, and I was like, well, I'm not going to miss an opportunity to play.
Yeah.
So I joined in and I sat down at the table. I took all the cameras up. I set them up for the first time. And then I met 4 new people. It's been almost a year now.
Almost. I think we started in like May. I think. It was definitely May. I think it was like the middle of May, June.
But now, like, I love these guys. And I know that, like, we're tight now. Like, and this is... We've only ever once hung out as ourselves.
Yeah, which was
Mon's birthday.
Monica's birthday party.
Ago.
Yeah, a month later.
Until, like, you know, there was bits and pieces between game and on breaks and things, sure, but, like, we've gotten to know each other as our fantasy characters. And we have so much, like, bringing us together now. And it's crazy.
Yeah, like now we're organising like events where like we link up outside, like we're doing like New Year's and all that sort of stuff together. Like it's the power of tabletop. It's the power of storytelling. It does. I strongly believe that when you involve yourself in storytelling in tabletop, for most people, you become better and you learn to be better and you learn to be kinder.
Collaborative storytelling as well. It's not just, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to tell a kid a story. It's not just making up a fantasy, but it's that collaboration. It's working off people. It's little things like, I know sometimes I can overpower a conversation, and it's something learning in the game to let other people have their moments and stuff too. Like, you start to see a bit more and realize a bit more about your own reactions, especially when you're trying to play another character. So my character's not meant to be the most confident, charismatic person. I'm fairly confident and charismatic in most situations. I need to reel that in. But it's also something I think in real life I sometimes need to reel in. So it's fun playing something that's playing into what I think I need to work on in my own personal self. Yeah,
and I think that just loops back around to, you know, what we were saying about like where the art imitates the life a little bit. It all is like asymptomatic of each other, you know what I mean? And it's wonderful. It's wonderful that we can learn that of ourselves and become the better versions of ourselves simply by playing a game and by storytelling, which I think, actually, because I'm looking at my little whiteboard teleprompter right there, we have everything laid out a little bit differently, but I think we'll actually jump down to the number 3 because that just links well into. So to cap off the world building segment, only develop where you know your characters are going to meet, where they're going to go, and obviously when you have a few sessions, you're going to learn your groove. And for those who are playing characters for the first time, is don't try and think of these huge grandiose backstories. Take one element of your real life that you wish you could have explored more, and you will develop a truly, truly wonderful character. If you can take away anything from that absolute ramble that just went on for like the last 40 minutes between the two of us, that's what I would recommend. But we are going to move into the next segment.
DM nerves.
So you've built your world, you've built your NPCs, your players have got their characters. You finally sit down behind the screen and you Mac wheel go to loading for about an hour.
Even before that.
Even before that, yep.
The night before I ran my first one-shot for this group, I was so anxious. I could hardly sleep. I was tossing and turning. Did I have everything I needed? Was I ready? Did I prep enough? The morning of, I couldn't eat. I was riddled with anxiety. Like, I know everyone. I'm playing a game with everyone. And yet every single time I run a game, I can't eat that whole day. My stomach just goes, nah, we're not doing that.
Hey, none of that.
Like, I have a generalized anxiety in general. Yep.
Generalized anxiety. I was like, what? Generalized anxiety in
generalized anxiety disorder.
The more you know.
Which I've gotten a lot better with over my last few years and over my life, but running a game really can bring it out.
Yep, it's true. The most nervous I think I ever am is beginning a new campaign, reading the opening vignette, and then going to the first character. I need to start seeing the interaction with another player before I start relaxing. Now, when we get into our episodes, I read off my little greetings and salutations intro, which seems to just be the staple for the show now. And, we do our ooh, we fade in, and then it literally straight to it. I'm not nervous at all. But man, episode 1, Pitfall, doing that first introduction, reading the vignette, going into Dardio was the first character that we saw. I was so nervous. I was so nervous. And even running the one shot that I wrote for the game shop group, the FLGS group that I'm a part of, that was nervous. That was meant to be a one shot. Now it's turned into 3 mini campaigns, and now we're going into a full campaign next year, which is all set in Miros. I'm doing a Matt Colville where I'm just running multiple campaigns for friends in the same world, because I'm mad into that.
We're building it out. We'll get more into that.
But DM nerves. It is a very real thing. I see a lot of people online talking about being nervous, talking about, like what you said, do I have enough? Do I have this? Do I have that? Let me be completely transparent. You are not going to have enough as you think you have when you first start. And that is a God's given fact. Because if you're unfortunate like me, one of the 5 psychos that are sitting on the opposite side of the screen from you will do something that completely throws the game into
you
disarray.
Think we're going here? We're going here.
Yeah, I was like, here I am thinking, oh yeah, they'll absolutely do this. No, that didn't happen at all. You know what I mean?
So what I've learned, like I was saying, is I might be someone that likes to build the world out, really plan an elaborate space. But I've learned not to plan out a session. Even a one shot, I'll pick my beats that I want you guys to hit. The details, I let my brain come up with on the time based on knowing the world.
Yeah.
So for the one shot I ran last weekend, we played for like 6-7 hours.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I had less than half a page written of story beats.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I had
point A, point B.
Basic character notes for like character names. I built some stat sheets for the enemies that I knew would recur. All the puzzles that you guys ended up coming across, I made up on the fly. I knew the rough concepts of what I wanted the things to have to be, but what they actually did, how stuff reacted, the magics that came out, all the stuff with the statues I came up with in the end.
That's crazy.
Just
That's outrageous.
by the time we got to there, I'm like, I know what these guys are reacting to. I can feel where this world what it's brought to us. And I knew the beats of the story. I feel so much more confident going in like that than I do, say, for the Feywild game, where I tried to write everything. Because when you've got too much, it's got to be perfect.
Yeah, or you feel like it has to run that way, otherwise it doesn't fit the fantasy that you've got in your head. It's funny enough. It's very funny that that's how you explain it, because that's now how I've now begun to run a lot of the sessions. Now, in the last couple of episodes that have come out, it's been very easy to prep for, because we are on a very straight path. I believe at the time of this episode, this airing, or at the time of recording this, we are now up to episode...
We've done 14.
14, which was Buried Regret, correct?
No, that was 13.
No, that's 13,
14
sorry. Buried Regret is the one that we've just uploaded. At the time of recording this, Buried Regret was the latest episode that we just uploaded.
Probably, yes.
Yeah. Because I can't see the future. Now, I obviously knew that when the players got to the Undercity, I was like, we know what we're here for. We are looking for Zero's son's body. Spoilers for anyone who hasn't watched that far. We are looking for Zero's son's body. You are in the Undercity. This place is dark. It sucks. No one likes going down there because malevolent energies and spirits exist. There's flipping creepy crawlies in there.
You will occasionally get an episode like that. It's almost like planning a one-shot.
Kind of, yeah.
You're narrowed in. The characters are on the tracks. You know, it's not railroading them anymore because this is the track they're on.
And they knew that too.
And yeah, it's happening. And you can kind of cheat that, I think, a little bit if you plan your sessions properly. And at the very end of the last session, you drop the hook and you've just gotten yourself into this situation. They're going to have to deal with that in the next episode, so that can help you to prep for that episode.
Yes, exactly right. I knew when Quartz, the cleaner, basically said, this is where he is. I watched everyone's face just go, like they were just like, nope, this sucks. And that was so easy, right? Literally, that whole thing, I planned up to when you guys fought the Burrower, and that was it. The rest of it I made up.
Yeah.
I make up, every episode, I make up the last hour on the spot, every time, because I don't need to have anything prepped. All I do is I start running the last hour of the game and I start taking notes. You'll see I'll aggressively start typing on my laptop, making notes for the next episode, and I'll put them at the top and relay them if I need them, and then go from there. Which has been
as this started, as you're saying, DM nerves, real thing. There's lots of little tricks and tips that individual people can use to help get past that. Biggest thing I can probably say, you are enough. What you're doing to provide your friends with a game that they're going to enjoy. And if they don't belong at the table.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Like, we put so much pressure on ourselves, and again, because we're building this world, we're building this situation, we want to do something amazing, and we want them to love it as much as we do. If they don't, they're not right for your table. Don't get me wrong, there are some DMs out there that probably need to tweak their ways they're playing. There's a lot of things. Yep. You want to talk to your players and understand what they want in a game and what they can and can't deal with. But if anyone at your table isn't appreciating the time and the effort you put in to build a world and build a game and create a story for them to just sit and enjoy, that's on them. And you as a DM should just feel confident going in that you are providing a service. You're building something that will give them the opportunity to explore parts of themselves, parts of stepping into someone else's shoes that they never thought they would. You're providing a gift to these people.
Mm. Yeah. It's not every playstyle is going to gel, but those who sit on the outside of the screen know that what they feel for being nervous, playing a character in front of like 4 or 5 of their friends can't possibly amount to the amount of nerves that we feel sitting on the other side of the screen. And they will understand, and like what I've said maybe an hour ago now, however it was, you're just going to find your groove. You'll figure it out, and it all just goes into lockstep, and it ends up becoming, the prep becomes enjoyable. Yeah. Running the game becomes enjoyable. And eventually the nerves will subside. Your nerves are very valid. You are allowed to feel nervous about
And I always
doing something. Yeah, oh, literally. So there are some episodes where I will go and I'm like, whoa, I'm a bit, I don't know how that's going to go. But eventually you find your groove and it'll all fade to the end. But yeah, I guess the points to take away from that is you're not going to be prepped for everything, and that's okay. Do not write a novel, because half the stuff you put in there will not probably come to light anyway. So keep your beats and your key points, and then make it up as you fan out.
Your players have no idea what's coming. They don't know what's meant to be behind the DM screen. If you stuff up a name, if you stuff up a location, if you don't get your timing right,
I've done it heaps.
they don't know. That's just the story now. It's all a part of it. The same way that they're making it up on the fly, you need to be comfortable making it up on the fly yourself. Because that's just the way it runs. That's the way these games are. And that's a big part of the fun, I've learned.
It really is. It's a big part of the fun. This actually tails into, we plan to do a whole segment purely on running games with like prep versus improv, which will come at a later date. So be ready for that one. But we do plan to cover that in a very real time. Oh no. Oh my Lord.
Custom classes.
So my brother was a state champion kickboxer for many years, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Bob Jones Endo Kai, and just classic boxing, American boxing. And watching him train and how differently the concept of martial arts and hand-to-hand combat has changed, I was like, you can have a hand-to-hand combat class that doesn't rely on like, you know, some of like the buzzwords of like, you know, martial arts, traditional martial arts, you know, like the use of key points I found was like the term for key points and using key points. I thought that was like, there's, you know, they kind of just threw it in there for like to be a buzzword, and it kind of makes no sense. And then the thing with monks is they're very subclass spread heavy. So depending on what subclass you pick depends on where you need to start spreading your stats out. Mm-hmm. And I don't like that. I don't particularly like that. So I've tried to go in to develop a hand-to-hand combat class that is not squishy, can do damage, but also has really good tactical abilities. So I'll perhaps maybe want to turn to you real quick to discuss the character you played, what subclass you picked, and what abilities you found were good for you to use in that one shot.
Yeah, so we just have started throwing together some occasional one-shots where Cody's run a few for people on our Discord to play a game with some of us from the table. So if you guys like our shows or anything like that, and you want to find a different community to play the occasional game with, jump over and check out our Discord. We'll throw the links in the description for this like we do with most videos. But it's really fun to be able to jump on every now and again and play with a different group, and it's a great opportunity to test some of these different things. So I played Mac, and Mac was a himbo. Mac was a himbo. So much fun to play. So as a little bit of a quick description, we're also working on some custom races.
Yes.
Which the forest folk is this particular one. So it's almost like the tiefling, but instead of demonic blood, it's forest stuff. Like
Sylvan, but like not Sylvan at the same time.
So we're trying to tweak up and play, do things a little bit differently. So this was a play test of both that custom race and custom class. So I built up Mac as the bruiser, which is the real like boxing heavy, fists throwing kind of fighter. It played in really well with our forest folk that we've developed because they're dex heavy, and we've given the option to pick between strength or dex as your lead part for your skirmisher.
The skirmisher stat, yep.
So I ended up getting him jacked. His dex got to 20 with enough
at level 5.
Pieces.
Yeah.
Some good rolls definitely helped. Low intelligence, low wisdom, but charisma and dex were through the roof, which made for a really fun character to play. It was great. So one of the heavy features that I really leaned into is up against the ropes. So this concept comes from the idea of, fighters learning, playing with their defense and being pushed up against the ropes. So in this, if I was to get another character pinned up against a wall, I would get advantage.
Yeah.
On my attack rolls. And if I pinned myself up against the wall between myself and the other character, I get a bonus to my AC as I'm using the ropes to help me. Which I think really plays into that, like, a different style of fighting. Like, the monks always have this they're a learned fighter, they're from a certain group or cult or
monastic tradition, I think is what they call it in the game, yeah.
And that isn't the way I always want to play a brawler.
Yeah. So there is actually a subclass in Vane, which actually gave me a lot of inspiration, which is the Pugilist by, I believe it's Benjamin Huffman. Mm-hmm. I own that. I love the Pugilist. I think it's sick. They've got moxie points that they can spend, and depending on what group you come from, like where you learn how to scrap, it depends. It gives you like different proficiencies, different abilities. But yeah, I took what I liked about the Pugilist and go, well, how can I really make it? So up against the ropes, I kind of feel like maybe I'll hear some people being like, oh, but advantage on attack rolls if they're against the wall compared to when you're against the wall. How often do you find yourself actually caught in a D&D fight? It's actually not as often as you think. So it's actually very limited, but it also employs that the bruiser subclass enforces movement, which is great. But
it gave me a reason to move around the field. So instead of just charge at this guy and hit them from here, I was trying to place myself. I was trying to intentionally pick where my character would be. It was other things, like there was a chance at one point where I'm like, oh, if I moved here, I could give these guys flanking, but I don't want to lose the wall.
Yes.
So it presented an entire new approach to how I had to think about where I wanted to place myself.
Which is worth, and some people are like, oh, boxers are meatheads, they just whack each other. But look, the inspiration for Up Against the Ropes, Muhammad Ali, who had some of the best defensive movements in the game, and Canelo Alvarez, who I think is one of the greatest young boxers of our generation. You look up any highlight reel of Canelo Alvarez, that man, like water, moves like water. He is so good. And it's like, why can't that be transferred over to a fantasy game where you're playing a brawling boxer? And that's the excuse. Some people might think it's powerful. That's probably because it is. But it's also very, very circumstantial.
It's very limited as well. Like, you have to be up close. You're not pulling out weapons. Your strength comes from your unarmed attacks.
Yes.
Particularly the way that I built my guy up. No armor, no weapons. He was throwing fists. I had to be up in the front and the center of it. I lucked out with a few rolls and things. I managed with the combination, I think, again, like I was saying, of getting my dex up high enough and giving a magic item which boosted my saving throws.
That's right.
So I had the Cloak of Protection as a magic item, so a bonus 1 to my AC and advantage on saving throws. That's the only reason Mac survived.
Yeah. So you get unarmored defense as a skirmisher, because look, there are abilities from the monk that I have taken and moved straight over because you are a martial artist or a hand-to-hand combat specialist. So there are things that I've taken like the climbing, the water walking, all that sort of stuff, because fighters can be bruisers or like they can be agile. It's very, very spread, but these are all abilities that you're going to take with you until you pick your subclasses. The bruiser is one of, at this point in time, I believe we have four subclasses, maybe 3. I can quickly check. That's why I brought it. You think it was just me being fancy, but I actually have a reason for this.
So yeah, there's different subclasses as the general thing, but it really gives you your different styles of fighting. And I think I really took a while picking which one I wanted to go with for Mac, because each one really does push you down a certain style, how you want to play that character. And I had a style in mind for Mac. For those of you who are fans of it, Mac is heavily based on Mac from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, with the voice of Arthur from
Peaky
Blinders. I wanted to make a douchey himbo, bit of a loser, but overly confident in himself.
Which he was.
He was. It was
succeeded.
Great. taking a little bit of that inspiration, and he's going to come back in another one-shot we've got coming up soon. I might have to change the voice because it was a bit tough on my throat after a couple of hours.
Yeah, you got after a couple of hours. Yeah, about 4 hours, I think we did consistent play. So I have found it. So there's 4 subclasses. We obviously have a bit of a little the Bruiser, the Learned, which is where you start becoming what my brother and I jokingly call the clinician, the guy that can put on a clinic and pick people apart by watching how they fight. Very typical. The Grappler, where you start moving from unarmed, your unarmed punching, where you can start taking people down, using that to get advantage on attacks, etc. And then the Arcane Brawler, which is, the fighter that learned a little bit of magic, not too dissimilar to your Eldritch Knight. So a knight that has learned to use some combat magics to help aid. And each class gives you 2 abilities, so you get 2 class features, which add to your overall build. And then obviously as you get later down, 4th level, 5th level, 6th level, I basically got most of from 4th level up to 11th done. Then I just need to do 14th, 18th, and 20th. And then I've got to add where your ability score improvements go, or you get your feats, which probably I will transfer over from the monk, so it's still quite easy, like from their table. But yeah, I think the last thing we'll talk about on that is the first thing I did, I removed key points. I did not want to use a point system. I wanted to use a die pool. I'm really into die pools right now. I feel like it's very efficient and it keeps it fun. So we got rid of key. I think this is one of the first things I sent you when we started working on this. And I've changed it to a die called Fury. So Fury is a pool of die that a skirmisher will have access to, which is you can spend it to empower attacks, abilities, or spend them to gain certain buffs for yourself or add to combats or particular encounters. So you've got things like, I'll just relate the names and I'll let you guys see it when we release it. Beat down, guard up, fancy footwork, attack rush. All those sort of things that you can consistently spend Fury on, and obviously as you level up, your dice pool goes up and you'll unlock more abilities as you level up, and that'll become way more useful. Some are good for your AC, some are good for attacks, damage output, all that sort of stuff. I think I'd like to have maybe like 6 or 7 in total, which gets stronger as you level up. But that's been fun. Being able to develop something and go like with Battle Master Fighter, there's one where it's like you can it's like almost like a Song of Swords Bard's defensive flourish, where you roll the die and that gets added to your AC. Then we've got one like that. Then we've got one where it's like you just get to roll because they're all D8s. You get to roll the D8 and just tack it onto your damage because you just decided on that particular punch you wanted to hit extra hard, and you just break someone's jaw. Like, I'm all in for that sort of stuff. You are if your hands are your weapons, they are deadly weapons, and you will kill someone with them. That's my dream.
It's a super fun class to play. It's heavy on your damage output. You can build them up to be a bit of a tank. It's fun to have a different style of tank rather than your classic barbarian fighter. Paladins. Like, I got to be a big dumb bruiser charging in that was still a bit agile and quick and had his skill set that wasn't just, I'm big. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You don't have to play them as big. Like I said, if you built up the decks like I did with Mac, instead, you don't have to do him as a big, dumb, buff bruiser like I decided to play him as. You could make him a very small, little, nimble martial artist and have the same kind of output. Like, you can play this in so many different ways. And with the current popularity of things like the UFC and your wrestling, boxing, all the classic stuff, there's a lot of inspiration out there that you guys can build a character
And
on.
the resurgence of martial arts movies. You want to see some of the best martial arts movies? Avengement with Scott Adkins, great, very hardcore. Be wary going into that one. The Raid movies, the Raid 1 and 2, they are said to be the martial arts films that reinvigorated the martial arts genre, and I still go back to this day and just watch all the highlights from the fight reels of that movie because they are just so good.
Or if you want some goofy fun at the table, just watch a heap of Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan movies are phenomenal.
There's a subclass we've got to do. Something that uses the environment.
Oh, God. the comedic fighter. Oh,
Yeah.
You're going to see it. This guy's going to roll out there and just do absolute wacky stuff.
But ultimately, awesome fun to play. I'd like to test it out or have it tested as well with different races, because obviously testing it with our custom race at the same time was a little bit mumble jumble because, you know, there are some overlapping things there, but testing it out with a few different races would be great.
There'll always be overlap, but I think, yeah, once you start getting it through a bunch of, like, I'd love to see, like Earth Genasi, because they ignore difficult terrain. That'd be cool. Astral Elves, because they can teleport. Could you imagine being able to teleport in and out of hand-to-hand combat? Sick as hell. So much cool stuff. But I could go on about that for a while. The second custom class that I'm developing, which is taking a little bit longer because it's a lot harder to do with what I want to do. I was at home one day and rediscovered my love for the Infamous games, where you play the conduit. I think his name's Cole, or whatever his name is, and you can pulls electricity out of like transformers and stuff, and can like shoot charged energy blasts. And I was like, man, elemental magic lacks that kind of ability in 5th edition to just pull energy out from like the world and do it.
Primordial sources.
Yeah, exactly. And not be like a sorcerer and not be like a wizard. And it's elemental stuff. So even though it's like sort of like magic, it's not like spells. It's like you are a conduit. You are a siphon. You are siphoning.
See, now I'm thinking of a character of how well that would cross into the forest folk as well.
Exactly, like something like that would be crazy. So that's what the original working title was called, The Conduit, and then literally about 4 days later, MCDM released a video on their RPG, and their clerics are now called Conduits. So I didn't want to copy that, so I made I call it the Siphon because they're siphoning power. That's from Monica. Thanks, Monica. The Siphon is a little bit less. I've got a lot of proof of concepts and stuff in there, but the idea is you don't have slots. It'll use a very similar system to MCDM's The Talent, where it's roles. Instead of being a manifestation role, it's a channeling role. And what we're working on is where we want the percentage of failure to be. That's what we've been working to and for. I've got a few people that I've been speaking to, friends that are really into the game, discussing about where's the risk versus reward factor, how far we want to go. But the idea is you are a person that is like a evolved lineage, like sorcerers, where it's like a mutation, and that's what the subclasses are called. They're called mutagenic paths. Your body has now evolved into the next stage of being able to channel the primordial powers that exist in the world beyond just casting spells like a sorcerer. And obviously, you know, there'll be fire, lightning, water, ice, earth, steel, all that sort of stuff, which will all come in due time. But that's also something we plan to do. So once the Skirmisher, the first pack for the Skirmisher goes out for play testing, and we've got pretty good notes on what we need to change, whatnot, is probably when we'll start readjusting the Siphon. But yeah, thought that'd be a cool announcement to do, the 2 first fully custom classes that we're doing. Seb's mentioned it already. Custom races, we got a couple under the belt. Did you want to maybe pop off on some custom races?
Custom races, making our own people.
We're working on 3 custom races at the moment. One is the Forest Folk, which I just mentioned before in our Skirmisher information. These guys are that Sylvan, almost Fey-ish humanoid crossed with deer, antelope, moose. Essentially, humans with animalistic faces and antlers. You can give them tails, you can give them hooves or feet, you can kind of tweak them up how you see fit for your particular character, isn't there?
Antlers are also optional, you don't have to have
visual
antlers.
output. It's really just taking that really animalistic human and giving them like a blanket class. This idea is that these are forest-born humanoids, whether you want to make them come from a tribe or just some kind of lineage, some kind of blessing of the forest that causes a mutation for them to come that way. You can play them however you want in history. But we're trying to play the idea of taking features from those kinds of deer and elk and things and playing them into our characters. It started off with our Feywild game where I played Lord Blackhorn, and we decided, so at first I was going to make him sort of a half-elf druidic mutation in the Fey, but then we decided why not make a race based around him and expand it out. And then I've also now played Mac, which we will have coming up in another one-shot we'll be doing soon, which is a direct sort of, not spin-off, but yeah, it's in line with our main campaign.
It's tangential.
Yeah, so
to the main
something
campaign.
a main campaign has done has set off a chain of events, which we're going to play out over here, which then could affect the main campaign. Kind of to build out a mirror cinematic universe.
Kind of, yeah. I got the idea from MCDM before their stream of the chain went down. They actually were going to run a heist episode where they all just got to play characters that were hired by the chain to run a heist. And I was like, that's brilliant. It lines up with the main campaign, but it gives everyone a chance to just make new characters or bring back old characters to play. So I was like, yep, let's do that. And the best bit is it's still technically episodic for the main campaign. It'll probably go up as like episode 17 or episode 18 because
15.5
15.5 because it directly links off to the original campaign.
Yeah, so the Forest Folk essentially came from that kind of thing. We've developed them with the idea of instantly a +2 to Dex, a bit of that Fey ancestry within them gives them, what is it? It's a performance and...
Oh, let me find it here. I can double check that. There's the other two. Where have you gone? There we go.
So rather than giving them like advantage on things, we're running with the idea of any roll below a 7 or
Crowd
below.
pleaser.
Crowd pleaser. So any roll of a 7 or below is treated as an 8 with...
You have proficiency in persuasion and deception, so your Fey heritage ignites wonder and whimsy in others. When making rolls for deception, persuasion, and performance, you may treat any roll of 7 or lower as an 8.
Yes. Which is a fun way, I think, to do it. Instead of giving them advantage, it's, no, you are a smooth talker. You're going to...
Whether you try to butcher it or not on purpose, people are just naturally enamored by your beauty. That's the whole kind of thing that we developed. And that actually ties in with the racial bonuses. You either get a +2 to charisma or dexterity. You pick where it goes. So it's not a +2 and then +1 to something else. No, you just get another +2. You get this or you get that. That's what it is. As well as very typical magic resistance, advantage on saving those against spells.
Yeah. And seeing as most of the race is built around the idea of a humanoid with some kind of horns or, it's really focusing on that stuff, we're also looking at adding in a variation of a charge attack, a little bit powered down just after playtesting it. I was using my horns constantly to smash stuff.
Headbutt.
So we're like, I think that could be something played into it. So we are still workshopping this stuff and we're going to try and expand on it, but try not to make anything too overpowered.
Try not to. I'm very much a make shit strong and throw heaps more at people. I'm that kind of person.
And by all means, if at your table you want to say, make him as beastie as you want.
But
yeah, this is the first race. We've also got Cody working on a rat folk.
I've got 2. Yeah, so the rodentkin is one term that people use, but that's more of like that's something like they say in like a derogatory sense. The actual name, I got it from the actual scientific name for where like mice and rats all fall into the family, and they're called the Muradane. So I love for some reason I love the Skaven from Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Never played a Sigmar game in my day of my life. I just love Sigmar minis. I love their sets. They look great. I love the concept of Skaven where they're like rat people, but then also the idea was like, well, if we have forest folk that are like moose, antler, gazelles, all that sort of stuff, surely we can have like field mice and just normal mice and then rat folk. So I developed a whole little race of those. And you can choose to be small or medium, which is great. Very much like Harengon. That was another one that influenced me a lot. Is I love the Harengon race. I've played one before. So you can choose to be small or medium. I love the idea of like little rabbit dudes getting in with like a greatsword and like just decimating someone. It's always fun to me. You're fast, 40 feet of movement off the bat, because that makes sense because rats and mice are pesky little buggers. And very, very average stuff that people would assume. You get tooth and claw. You get to pick whether you have sharp teeth or you get to have like sharp claws. And then the abilities that I put into the Muradane, which I think make them stand out, is nimble, because they are a lot on their feet kind of folk. You gain a +2 to dexterity and advantage on dexterity saving throws. So dexterity saving throws are very common. They might not always appear in roleplay or combat scenarios, but I think for a race like that, it's good to have, judging on the basis of, we've all seen how rats and mice are quick as hell. And then olfactory observant. You have an advantage on perception checks that involve smell, which obviously is very much up to the DM's discretion, but the Blood Hunter has it. Like in Blood Hunter, when you're in your transformed mode, you get advantage if you use your smell. Doesn't always mean you're going to find something, but if it does, good for you. So trying to give a bit more wiggle room for like stuff that may or may not come up in your game, but we're playing a high fantasy adventure game, so surely. And the last one, which I
ran a airships pirate themed campaign just like a week ago.
About a week ago.
And in it, one of our regular players, Bailey, wanted to play something inspired from what's it?
They start with a V. They're from League of Legends. Bailey's going to be screaming at the screen right now because I can't remember what it is. Vestian, I think is what they're called. I only just listened to Ruination like a month ago.
If you watch Rick and Morty, it's third person.
Yeah, kind of, but way cooler.
So the idea is taking something of the feats or features from an Aarakocra, but more of a humanoid twist. So we really are leaning into this like animal-human hybrids for a lot of our custom races. I think it's mostly because your big fantasy custom races have been done to death. We want to get down to some nitty-gritty tweaks and some individual variation.
Changing it up, like really separating what has been from what can be. So the name of this one, the working title was Half Avian Folk for about a month. They're called the Immisire.
That sounds so dope.
Imisai, I believe. I'm the worst Greek in the world. I can't remember the direct translations, but that is literally the word for half. It is the definition of half cut or half blood, something like that.
Cool.
And we originally took there's homebrew stats online somewhere on one of the big 5e free info hubs where someone actually made Vestians from League of Legends as a playable race. And I never want to deny my players a fantasy that they're trying to achieve, but I had to make it work in the confines of the game, my world that I built so that Seb could run it. So I said to Bailey, I was like, give me a week. So I took all the cool things from that original homebrew document and then I built in the extra parts that make sense in my world. The Immisire are what happens when an Aarakocra has a child with a non-Aarakocra humanoid. Because, you know, we have half orcs, half elves, there's half halfling, you know what I mean? Like, I don't really have a lot of intergender rules in my game.
It's a fantasy world. We're not sticking to
you know what I mean?
Laws of evolution here.
Exactly. Like, there's been references in the campaign where, like, where Bailey's character Voyage talks about having two dads, and the characters are like, well, I don't think science thinks that's going to be a thing, which that's obviously something we...
But also, we looked Cody and asked, in this world, can it? Because in your world...
You do whatever the fuck you want.
It's magic.
Dude, who's to say the parents don't just like stick their thumbs in a machine and then a baby just comes out? Do what you want.
Here's another quote, like going back to the world building earlier.
A few more tips for world building.
If you build a rule into your world, that is how your world works now.
That's the law.
This isn't our world. Like, I personally love building a little bit of science and things and tying it into our world because it helps make things make sense for people. But if you want to decide something works a certain way, lock that shit in and let the other things form around that. That's a great way to world build, because now if that's the way that's formed, it's going to change how other things work.
Literally, the concept of rift glass, which has now become a bit of a centerpiece in our campaign, actually came from when we were developing characters for the Feywild game. I wanted to use spells from the Dungeon Dudes Ghostfire Gaming Dungeons of Drakkenheim book, because there's some nuclear powers in there. And I was like, oh, but it needs, in their world equivalent, it's delirium. It came from a meteorite that fell from space. I was like, we can do that, but I can make it way more twisted, like in what works for my game, because the world just sucks in my game. So we made literally the equivalent of uranium. It is now fucking everything up.
So what we've done for Rift Glass, so Cody sent me what he wanted to do, and I'm like, all right, this needs to be some kind of dope crystalline thing that is just full of potential magic energy. So the concept behind it, and again, this might change because it hasn't fully fleshed out in game yet, but the same way that lightning striking sand makes glass, the idea is that huge, powerful swaths of magic melt and burn stone into a new form of a magical obsidian. Hence, where rifts between dimensions have opened up, they've often found really large deposits of this stuff because it's melted the stone into this new magical crystal that, whilst being melted, has captured parts of that magical wild energy. Hence the name rift glass. So that's, again, an example of me liking to take a little bit of the real world and mix it into how things work in ours to build up a story behind something. And again, in our game, we've heard the word rift glass. No one knows where this stuff comes from.
I put the thread out there, but we're following it.
Yeah. And again, this is the work in progress. This is behind the scenes where we're working with. We might change that. And that's another thing. You should feel welcome to change anything about your world at any given point, as long as it hasn't been put out to your players yet. Until that moment happens, nothing is concrete.
Exactly. But at the end of the day as well, you're the DM. Sometimes changes have to be made. You'll figure it out as you go.
Yeah.
It goes back to the thing, finding your groove.
Lean into the concept I mentioned earlier, the unfaithful narrator. Just because your players have been told something by one person doesn't mean it's fact. Like,
people lie, people forget, people cheat, and people steal.
And they have their own personal objectives and reasons for saying things. And then there's like the whispering game when you played as a kid, where everyone passes a message around and the message changes. 3-4 people in, it's completely different. So in a world with all the wild stuff that we're throwing out there, why can't this information have broken along the way? So if you've had your players told some information, there's no reason at all that later on they can't find out that that's completely false or misconstrued or misinterpreted.
Or edited to be wrong.
Yeah.
One of my favourite phrases I ever heard was from the end of one of the Call of Duty Modern Warfare games, where it's history is written by the victor. People that win write the history books. You know what I mean? So who's not to say that the history that your players think they know is incorrect because someone made it that way. And that has actually been a recurring theme in games off stream in my world, in the development of the rest of the world outside of Runeterra Shroud. And it will come to light as our campaign goes on, most definitely. But
which actually plays into
Supplements, giving you some stuff for your home game.
We've been doing custom races, some custom classes. Another thing that I've been starting to talk about is wanting to do supplements for your games at home. So these don't have to be played in our world. They don't, you can take your classic, any existing D&D game, ignore our classes, ignore our world, but things like foraging, potion making, brewing, creating magic items, it's something that I personally think is lacking in D&D. And as a big fantasy video game nerd, one of my favorite things is collecting different plants and making potions and making things. So what we are wanting to work on is a foraging guide, but in 2 parts. So one part will be for the DM. The DM gets a book with the rules, the rolling tables, how hard or easy something is to find, what the actual results of a said mix could do. The players, on the other hand, might go to a shop or loot a body, and on that body they'll find a guide to herbology or a guide to foraging. This will be an actual handout book that you can hand across the table that will be written in the perspective of a character from a fantasy world that has gone around and discovered this information. So it'll be more handwritten notes, concepts that a player can then take and actually, instead of just getting fed information, they can flick through a book and look for a potion or a balm or something that they want to make, and they'll have to ask, where can we find these items? Can we buy these items? Do we have to search certain places? We'll have a heap of notes for the DM that they can use, or of course you can tweak it yourself and say, well, in my world, this particular, the dragon snap flower might only be available in this part of the world, or they need to go on an adventure to find the things to make certain potions, or they can just roll for it. But the book might not be entirely factual. So the information in the DM's book has the truth, the information in the player's book might be missing a few things. Because the person who wrote this was just trying to figure things out as they went.
The unfaithful narrator.
Exactly. Which I think is super fun. Because you've got your players pulling some bits and pieces together and thinking, oh, we need this. This will work. On the back end, you've got the DM going...
Yeah, I can't wait to watch my players like blow themselves up trying to build this health potion thing.
And then they can figure that out, that, oh, something's wrong here. And then that can send you on a whole nother story beat of them trying to figure out what the real way to make this thing is, or something like that. And by all means, I encourage anyone out there, if we do get the point of actually having this release, make it even more intense. Make changes of your own. If you want to decide that certain potions just won't do what they're meant to do, or will do something else, or if they mismix it, it gives a different reaction. I think that's a lot of fun. But I really like the idea of handouts. So one book for the DM, one book for the players. Both of the same concept, but this gives the players something that can actually be handed to them across the table, and they can ends with them the book that their character in that world would have.
Yeah, that would be very cool. And then it ends up being fun story beats as well, because like you get to watch a player, if something triggers their memory and they realize they've seen it before, very observation duty, and they start flicking to a page where they've heard a buzzword.
Yep.
And then in character, they pull their book out and begin to read, or you watch them as like other characters are having a moment and they're off in the corner freaking out because they believe they've read something that's important to their story. There's so much you can do with it that is going to initiate emotional responses to the game, especially when you've got games where there is lots of traveling. You know what I mean? And there is lots of wilderness like there is in our game outside of the cities. So that's something that Seb came to the group with, and that's going to be cool to see. I can't wait to see that and see like how that adds like a new layer to the game.
So if it works, what we want to do, or what I want to do, and I'm sure everyone else is keen to be a part of it too, is we're going to start with foraging. Then we want to go with potions and poisons. I'd love to then do distilling, so certain magic items that you can run through, purification to make more potent. I really would love to do a hunting and jerky guide. So taking classic D&D monsters and saying, if you kill a werewolf, you can take certain parts of it and you can make them, you can't just use them raw, but if you process them a certain way, and obviously this would involve game downtime and a certain set of rolls, you might end up with something that can give you small boosts later on.
Yeah.
So little things like the night bloom flower is something I've started to work on.
Yes.
And the idea of the night bloom root is that if chewed on, it'll give you like 5 minutes of night vision. So in certain circumstances, if someone's collected this, they'll get a little boost of a slight night vision who doesn't already have it. But then I like the idea of, say, distilling the night bloom root, if you have enough of them and you succeed on your rolls, might give you a spirit that taking a shot of this spirit will give you an hour of this night vision. But then it wears out. And then you have to take another. And then you have to take another. But then there are supplementary rules. For every shot you take over that night, you are going to get drunk. And then you're going to have disadvantage on certain things.
Alcohol consumption.
So
not safe.
Stuff like that. So there'll be pros to this, but also long-term effects if you try and do too much of it. So we want to add extra abilities and the ability for people to make potions themselves and create things on the fly, but not all of them will have added, just pure bonus.
Yeah, it'll be trade-off.
Exactly.
Trade-off value. Which I think 5th edition does lack. You can either have something bad and you don't do it, or you have something that's bad and good, but you don't know what you want to do. I think I agree. It's something that D&D lacks. You want to give players the option to make bad choices for the sake of the greater good, which is always fun.
Plans to grow, expanding Tomes and Tales in 2024.
So the idea behind a lot of these classes, races, expanded content, supplements, ultimately I would love to do some of our one-shots as playable stories for you guys to be able to actually run yourself. we want to eventually get to the point where we can create a Patreon where we actually provide value for you guys. So it's not just give us something to help support the channel, which by all means we would love, but we don't want to just ask for something without giving you guys something back. So we're trying to work on these. It's a very early part of the process, but between our whole group, the ability of storytelling and creativity and our love for this game, the luck we have with having some awesome digital artists in our team that we can actually hopefully provide some visuals to go along with all this as well. We really do want to be able to get in the space over 2024 of creating a Patreon where we will have magic items, including cards and art, supplements, stories, races, classes, guides to different elements of the world and ways to expand on your own games, not just being within our world.
Yeah, I think the idea that that I've had in my brain was if we offer a service like that where people that support us actually get something, it's like I'd try to do like maybe minimum, I'd like to do at least 5 subclasses a year for like different classes. Like I've already worked on one for the sorcerer, and I've worked on one I'm working on one for the wizard, and I've got a third one coming for the cleric. So with the discussion of having like a Patreon and a subscription service for people that like want to support the show but actually get something from it, because like Seb said, I'm one of those things where it's like I'm one of those folks where it's like I love that if people love something they'll support it, but I want to give back to the people that would give to us. That has always been my dream. If you are willing to spend your money to support a group that you like, I'm going to make it that you get value out of where your money goes. So that's why I've been working on for like Patreon, if that was ever a thing. I think the subclasses would be something you get as part of the Patreon.
I think all of anything ideally, if you're a supporter of the Patreon, anything we produce, like magic items, all that sort of stuff, I think we'd want to include, because the whole point of that is providing stuff to you, and if you're a part of our community, that way you can give us feedback and you can help us with it as well.
One of those things where, exactly. So like doing subclasses, races, custom classes, like when we get into what we would call like devlogs, development updates, we'd release the packets every month for people to read and go over and test out, and then we take all the feedback, disappear for about 6 months, come back with another one, update it, and then when it gets to the point where we're happy with it, if you're a member of the Patreon, you just get that class. But then if you're not a member of the Patreon but you tell people and they like it, they can go purchase it. They can purchase it from our store, maybe Drive Through RPG or DM's Guild, all that sort of stuff. Like we'll probably end up having our own web store to run that, so there's no third parties and it's all it's coming from us. But that sort of thing, if you've been a supporter since, like, if you support us on a monthly basis, you'll just get that stuff as part of your subscription. But if you've got friends that you think would like it, they don't have to lock into a monthly thing. They can just go and buy it, which is all that fun stuff. I've really gotten into the swing of like homebrewing and creating like custom stuff now. So like there's going to be heaps. Like Seb, you've got a document that's got like nearly 200 magic items on it. At the end of the day, if you're willing to give to us, we are going to give back to you. That has always been my thing. I want to be more than just an actual play channel. I want to be a hub of creativity and tools and utensils for anyone that's willing to jump in and have a go. That's something that's definitely going to be down the line, as far as, we want to be at a point much higher in the channel's lifespan before we look at anything like that. But if that's something that you think you'd be interested in, please let us know. We have multiple ways you can contact us. Discord, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. We're definitely more lively on the YouTube and probably on the TikTok and our Discord more than anything, because social media is just kind of not as fun as it used to be back in the day. So we like having the things where it's direct interaction, where we upload and our Discord.
We're doing this with the hope of pulling together a community. We don't want to just be, like, we love playing. We've got our group. We have our fun. But the reason we're putting it out there is, one, I wanted to practice my long form editing. Now we want to build up a community. We want to find more like-minded people that love the things that we love and want to be a part of what we're doing, and we want to be able to give back to you guys. So if you can think of anything you'd like to see us do, if you've got any ideas you'd like to see us expand on or get our feedback on, like we said, jump over to the Discord, comments down below. I respond to everything I can on YouTube. We want to build our community. We want to be a part of it. We want you guys to be a part of it. And we want to be able to help you tell better stories.
Yeah, like I love nothing more than when people tell me what's happened in their campaign and like what cool, unique things they've planned, or, you know, what the characters are doing, this and that, which is some of the interactions I had when I got to host my first panel. Like, that sort of stuff rules, man. It rules, and I love. And if you get something from this silly world that I built at 2 a.m. in my bedroom, and that we've now just decided to upload to the internet, that means I've done something. I've done something right. We've done something right, and it's an accomplishment all in and of itself. Especially if you take it and make it yours.
Let's be honest. There's not a lot of people out there that we can talk about this stuff. I don't get to come home from a game and explain to my roommate why I'm in such a good mood because my imaginary halfling death cleric just got to talk to his god. Yeah. It makes no sense to other people. But in our community, like, we love this stuff. We will talk about this stuff non-stop. Like, and I'm sure there's other people out there that are the same as us. And we want to bring it all together.
We do want to bring it all together. But you know what? With how much we've sort of covered in the first episode, a bit of a roller coaster away, I think that'll probably be a good one to...
Absolutely.
To cap it off.
So, this was our first discussion of Above the Table.
Title below.
So, we're myself, Seb, and our DM, Cody, which we should have probably done at the beginning. We'll get there. We're going to talk D&D, we're going to talk tabletop, we're going to talk the stuff we're coming up with. We're going to try and get some of the other players.
It's not just going to be me. I know I've already roped Sky into coming on because she's also a fantastic DM and she's got excellent understanding of stories and stuff. So she's going to get on here.
So watch this space. Tomes and Tales is going to explode in 2024. We're going to go from just being our actual play to this podcast, some short segments, some more information on our custom stuff, or just talking about different topics in the in the TTRPG community. We want to grow this channel to be more than just our actual play. A little bit of a sneak. We're also trying to work on a basic animation, but it's really, really hard.
Yeah. Animation's hard, man. Getting animations done is wild, but we've started taking steps in the right direction. So we're going to have little shorts that truncate episodes down for easy consumption for those who are coming in a little bit late, that don't want to shuffle through 100 hours of game.
Particularly if you want to skip our first few where the audio can jank out a little bit and we miss some video in some of the earlier episodes. So we're working on a lot at the moment. All of us really are all in on this. We love it. We want to build it up. We want to make it something that is for more than just us.
Yep. I tell stories for the love of stories, but I like telling stories that people can relate to in one way or another and become invested and want to know more about, you know what I mean? I just mitigate the roles and do the world, but these crazy people play the characters and the story goes where they go, and I like seeing it. I like watching it. So, and I know others do as well, and we're going to keep building that community to...
I've said it before about my craft stuff. There's something incredible about taking something from your mind and making it into something real that the rest of the world can experience. And that's what we want to do with this stuff.
Yep. That's exactly what we want to do. And we will. It is inevitable.
So, until next time, we've got to come out with an outro.
And scene. There we go, that works.
Yeah.
It just cuts to black.
Thanks for sticking with us.